Okay, so hi, thank you so much for joining us for our Living with Kidney Disease and Transplantation program. This is our last panel discussion of the program. I'm Rachel DePaul. I'm the Senior Director of Programs at the National Kidney Foundation of Illinois. So our mission is to improve the health and well-being of people at risk for or affected by kidney disease through prevention, education, and empowerment. And I'd also like to thank our sponsors for our Living with Kidney Disease series, DaVita Kidney Care, Fresenius Kidney Care, Gift of Hope Organ and Tissue Donor Network, Northwestern University Medicine, and UI Health. Just as a reminder, as we're going through tonight, please feel free to ask our panelists any questions. You can use the chat button at the bottom of your screen. So just go ahead and if you have any questions, use the chat. We also do ask you to complete our survey that will help us plan future Living with Kidney Disease programs. We've been emailing the survey links every single Friday. And we also need your help finding a new name. So Living with Kidney Disease and Transplantation is a pretty big mouthful. So we're trying to find a really great name that encompasses what we cover in the program. So if you have any suggestions, please email them to me by Monday, November 30th at rdepot@nkfi.org. We'll be announcing the winner in early 2021. And if your name suggestion is chosen, we'll be sending you a $100 Visa gift card. So at this time, I'm very excited to turn it over to our Director of Outreach and Government Relations, Monica Fox, who will be introducing our amazing panel and facilitating tonight's discussion. So Monica, it's all yours.
Thanks, Rachel. All right, so Rachel stole my thunder because I was going to start out by saying I'm Monica Fox, the Director of Outreach and Government Relations, and I have an outstanding panel here with me today that I'm really excited to hear from and share with. I'll also let you know that I, too, am a kidney transplant recipient. That's what brought me along this journey. So I've been living with kidney disease since 2013 when I was suddenly diagnosed. Spent 3 years on dialysis, and the day before Thanksgiving 2016, I received my gift of a kidney from a deceased donor, Milton, who is my hero. So Milton and I have been getting along famously since then, and I'm just happy to be here, be your host for this evening. We have about an hour together. So we're going to start out by having our panelists share their story with you as you listen. If there are any questions, anything they say that raises a question in your mind, something that you really must know, please chat us, and we will definitely get to your questions before we're finished this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with Gregg and Diane. Gregg, would you like to share your story with us? We can't hear you, Gregg.
There we go.
Okay.
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Yeah, my kidney problems started as a result of unrecognized high blood pressure. It was rather abrupt. I didn't feel right. Went to a prompt care type of place. At that time, my blood pressure was 192 over 112, and they sent me directly to the hospital. Got to the hospital and everything. They tried for a long time to figure out what the problem was, and they never really did, other than the fact that most of my family members have high blood pressure. So that was that part of my story. I got a transplant in 2007 at Barnes. Actually, it was October 30th, 2007. And when I got it, when it was all over and I was ready to go home, I weighed 208 pounds. Well, anyone who's been on the wonderful diet that they put you on while you're doing your going through the process of getting ready to be transplanted, dialysis, you know what kind of a diet you're on. And over the next 3 months, I gained 20 pounds because all of a sudden I could eat whatever I wanted to. And I did. And when we went down to Barnes in February the next year, my wife alluded to my creeping weight, and the doctor said it's more like galloping. So I figured at that point that I better do something. So I started going to the gym, and it was a combination of a lot of cardio and lifting weights and everything, but I brought my weight down quite considerably. This morning I weighed 170 pounds. I continue to walk, even though the gyms are not open. I have weights here at home. I have bands, I have a ball, and the necessary things for me to keep my weight in check. It's also helped me to keep my blood sugar in check. I really watch my sugars and my fats, specifically saturated fats. And so I'm doing quite well now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And Diane, would you like to share?
Yes, I was originally his caregiver and then ultimately his donor for the kidney. It's kind of interesting. I never thought that as a wife and a non-relative that I could be a donor. It wasn't until we went down to Barnes for his initial evaluation that they started talking, and they said, well, yes, anybody can donate. So I went through the process to figure out if I could donate blood work and all that good stuff. Oh my gosh, I think they took like 26 vials of blood just to double check to make sure that you're healthy and that you're okay to donate. Kind of an interesting thing, there are 5 antigens that you can match at, or 6, is that what it is? Yeah. Okay. And a lot of times relatives or daughters, brothers, sisters, whatever, can match on a wealth of those antigens, anywhere between 2 to 6. We were a match on none of them antigens. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to donate to him. And they said, no, they said, it really doesn't matter. The anti-rejection drugs are so sophisticated that it doesn't matter. Even if you're a 0 match, that's fine. And he does very well on the medication that he takes. So it worked out well, and it was quite an eye-opener because I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to have to get somebody that's related. And it did not work out that way. It actually worked out for the best, helped out both of us, and I think it worked well.
Wonderful. So you guys were in effect a perfect match. From more so than you knew, and I think that's awesome. And you got a few chips. You got a few chips with Gregg since you gave him the ultimate gift, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. How about Nikki and John? You want to share?
Hi, everybody. My name is Nikki Curtiss. I am from the suburbs of Chicago. My journey with kidney disease began when I was in 8th grade. I actually went for my 8th grade or high school physical, and the doctor found that my blood pressure was extremely high. Now, I had been playing sports and I was a pretty active kid and never had any trouble breathing or, a reason that would have alarmed us to check my blood pressure. But that was one thing the doctor saw, and it kind of raised a red flag. So at 13, he sent me in for a kidney biopsy, and we discovered that I had some chronic kidney disease, which they diagnosed at that time as focal and segmental glomerulosclerosis, or FSGS. So from that point on, I was treated with medication, and I was stable for about 14 years. Until in 2016, my kidney function drastically and quickly declined. So much so that I had to start emergency dialysis. I ended up in the hospital and had a chest catheter placed to start dialysis that following day. So that was in July of 2016. I was then on in-center hemodialysis for about 3 years and continued to do my full-time job. It was definitely a challenge, but I'm a teacher and it was important to me to continue working. So I went to work and I did my dialysis until about 9:30 p.m. So it was definitely challenging, definitely a toll on any kind of social life I would have had as a 27-year-old. But we began the transplant search process, and I ran into quite a few obstacles, one of them being my weight and being eligible for a transplant because of being overweight. I struggled and was turned away by a few hospitals for transplant because of that. Finally discovered the University of Illinois at Chicago, where they do robotic transplant surgery, and they take candidates who are a heavier weight. And so I was very blessed to then be able to begin the process of looking for a donor at that time with UIC. My dad was the first to jump at getting tested to see if he would be a match for me, and he was. And so I was very blessed to have someone as close to me as my dad to be a match for me. And so we began that process in July of 2018 and going through numerous tests for the both of us multiple times during the week. And at that time, my GFR was at a 5 and my creatinine was up to 12. So I was definitely experiencing a lot of side effects, and it was very difficult. Thank goodness for dialysis for keeping me strong for that long. But of course, we know that there are side effects to that as well. So we began the transplant search. We did all the testing. We were ready to go. And then about 2 weeks before surgery, we got a call letting us know that they had found an even better match than my own father, which we were extremely amazed by. But the match that they found was through the swap program. And so there was another donor and another person who needed a recipient. And we did a cross match, a 4-way swap. So my dad donated his kidney to another gentleman, and the woman who was going to, or who hoped to be helpful for her family member, but didn't match, actually matched with me. So it was kind of crazy. It all happened really fast, but we were so happy to be able to I was not only happy to be able to receive a new kidney, but that we were also able to help another person. So that's our story. It's a long journey to get where we are today, but we're thankful for it. So I had my transplant it'll be 2 years, a week from today, actually, on Thanksgiving. It will be 2 years, and things are going really well. My latest GFR was 63, and my creatinine latest was 1. So I'm so thankful for this blessing.
Awesome. That is really wonderful. I'm so thankful for your blessing also. John, do you want to share your perspective of that story?
Sure.
The dad who would give his daughter anything, literally.
Well, as Nicole said, we were sort of shocked by this happening when she went for her physical to transform from elementary school into high school. And I'm sure as a parent, you can imagine what we were going through. But as time went on, I resolved myself to the fact that I was going to be a candidate to do that, and was going to try and prepare myself for doing that. I'm up there a few years in age, and had talked to a number of people and was constantly doing some learning about the whole thing. And I was told that age could be a restriction. And when we first started talking to some of the earlier hospitals and doctors, one of the first things I was told was I probably wouldn't be able to do it because of my age, that I wouldn't be allowed to do so. I didn't think that it was really fair to just say I couldn't do it because of my age. I've always been a pretty active guy, played sports all through high school, into my college years, even afterwards, continuously involved in sports, and took pretty good care of myself. But I resolved myself to the fact that I've got to go even further to make sure I could do everything I could so that I couldn't be eliminated just because of my age. So like Dave, that's your name, correct? Greg had mentioned about the cardio program he went on. I went on a cardio and a weightlifting program. I worked out 5 days a week. and probably lost about 50 pounds or so, and pushed myself to make sure I did everything I could so that I could be a candidate to be considered. Um, I know we do have Nicole has a brother, a younger brother, and I felt confident that he would be a match as well. But given the fact that Nicole is so young, when it did come time for us to go through our testing, I pushed to have myself tested first, and given every opportunity to prove that I could physically handle it, health-wise handle it, to make the donation at my age, with the understanding that maybe down the road, 20 years from now, Nicole could need another one, and her brother would still be available to do that if I wasn't. So we went through the whole process, and lo and behold, like Nicole said, about a week before transplant, our coordinator, Laura Lawson from U of I, called me and asked me if I would consider doing the swap, to which I said, well, I have no issue either way, but it wouldn't be up to me, it's up to Nicole. You know, we're set to go. I'm a match. I've passed every test. You've checked my heart. You've checked my kidney. You say I've got the kidney of a 40-year-old person. I'm ready to go with Nicole, and we don't need to swap. But if Nicole wants to swap and go through a process, and if it can help somebody else, it's really up to her. And she didn't hesitate. And it's the best thing I ever did.
What a wonderful story. I'm just amazed that living donors, both you and Diane, are heroes for giving the ultimate gift. And then to be able to share that gift and help another person get what they need too is just phenomenal. So we'll go on to Quin. Quin, can you share your story with us?
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. These are some tough stories to follow up after, but it's so amazing the commonality of it. I was diagnosed, I was away at school my freshman year of college, and my body kind of went out of whack. I would swell up. I had literal scabs all over my legs from where my skin was tearing from the swelling. I was fatigued. I came home. I was 20 years old and I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, CKD, also FSGS, Nicole. So at that point, it was interesting that it came up in me because my dad had been on dialysis my whole life. He started dialysis before I was born. And for years, he thought it was from hypertension. So when it came up in me, we were able to find out it was, in fact, genetic and it was FSGS. I was able to sustain my kidney function for 7 years. I went on to finish undergrad. I was in grad school working on my master's. And like you, Nicole, my kidney function declined rapidly. Within a year, I was getting ready to start dialysis. I started at the age of 27 on January 18th, 2010. You don't forget dates like that. And for the first couple of years, so my dad had a transplant and his transplant went out the same time I was beginning dialysis. So we actually dialyzed together. We literally sat across from each other. So the first couple of years, I was actually his caregiver. I was trying to manage dialysis and take care of him at the same time. So the first couple of years, I didn't want to transplant. I was just more so trying to get adjusted to this new life. And after a couple of years, I said, it's got to be more for me. I want to transplant. My barrier was that I needed to lose weight to get on the list. So with the help of my gym and an awesome trainer, I was able to lose 120, 130 pounds by eating right and exercising. Shortly thereafter, I was listed. I had to wait a couple years before I actually got my transplant. But I'll never forget, it was November 5th. So a couple weeks ago, I celebrated 5 years of my transplant anniversary. I got a call at 3:00 in the morning saying, we have a kidney for you. And it was such a surprise because most people get called 3 or 4 times before they actually get the kidney. But or an offer, but here was the first time around and they had one for me. My mom actually offered to be a living donor to either myself or my dad. But we were so stubborn and loved each other so much. He said, I'm not going to take it because I want you to have it because you're younger. And I refused to take it because I was younger. And I thought he could use it more than I could. So it was a good kidney in our house that never got used. But so I got transplanted 6 weeks to the day after I was transplanted. My dad passed away suddenly, and it was a hard time. I really didn't know where to go, but that's the beautiful thing about donation. It can be a gift in so many ways. So for me, not only was it a second chance at life, but it also saved my life because when it got dark, I held on to, I was going to pay. I wasn't going to let the person who lost their life to give me a second chance at life. I wasn't going to let that be in vain. And I wasn't going to let the memory of my dad, who did so much to advocate for organ donation and dialysis, his life be in vain either. So I decided, I'm going to take this kidney and I'm going to keep moving forward. And that's what I've done. And I think that's the condensed version of my story.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Such strength that we all show as recipients, I'll have to say. And it's just amazing. And just a gift. And I agree with you, Quin, about the gift that you receive, that is so precious. And every day when you wake up, you want to protect that gift and you want to do something in honor of the person who gave you that gift. So that's just awesome. So when you, I'll ask you, Quin, while you were on dialysis, did you do in-center or did you do dialysis at home?
Well, I initially started off as an in-center in-center hemodialysis patient. I did that for 5.5 years. The funny thing, at that point, I decided I wanted to go back to work. So I started the process to transition to home hemo. And I learned how to cannulate myself, which was a struggle because my access is in my dominant hand. So I had to learn how to cannulate myself with my left hand. I got everything set up so that Tuesday they came to my house. They ordered my supplies and made sure I had space for my machine, drains, all of that stuff, the space to store my supplies. They gave me my start date of December 1st. Wednesday, I went to treatment, and Thursday, I got a call that I had a kidney. So I always tell people, if you want a kidney, sign up to go home, and it'll work out for you. No, but I was in center, and I was transitioning to in-home hemo.
Okay. And so we all have kidney anniversaries right in this little time frame here. So I think, Gregg, you said yours was in October?
October 30th, 2007.
Okay. And Nikki, did you just have your anniversary?
It's November 26th.
It's November 26th, and mine is November 22nd, so coming up. And Quin, what's yours? What's your anniversary?
Mine was November 5th, so a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So I'll ask you, Nikki, you were on dialysis for a time. How did you what kept you going while you were on dialysis? I know you said you worked while you were on dialysis, and I know that was quite challenging. And so how did you manage that challenge and keep doing it every day?
Wow. Well, I would say a big part of that was my support system, having the family that I had around me constantly, having a wonderful team of doctors, being able to build relationships with the staff at my clinic honestly made a huge difference as well, because I looked forward in a way. I know it sounds funny, but I looked forward in a way to going to see those people and, building relationships with them. It made it a little bit easier. So I think that having the support of my friends and family and being able to build relationships with my clinic staff really, really kept me going. And I like to think that I'm an optimistic person. And so I felt like there was something good coming for me in the future and that this was only temporary. And I had to remind myself that dialysis was what I needed to do to keep myself alive and that the alternative was not an option. And I felt like just trying to remain positive and keep that positive attitude made a huge difference as well.
I agree with you. You do build relationships in the dialysis center with the staff and with the other patients, and that becomes a part of your community. So, and having that positive outlook, absolutely. You really have to be positive. And that was a great way to think about it, that this is what I have to do to stay alive. This is not the end. This is just a part of the journey. Yeah, that's awesome. How about you, Greg? How did you spend time on dialysis, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
Actually, I did home dialysis, peritoneal dialysis before I had 2 peritonitis and ended up having to go to hemo. Well, one of the things about doing the hemodialysis at the center was the fact that I'm a people person, always been a people person. And my wife and I grow orchids. So I had pretty much a steady collection that I could take in for the other residents to see and for the nurses to see. And I had 2 ladies, one that sat on either side of me, who we used to cut up all the time, telling jokes and all kinds of stuff. So that made everything really light. And I liked the people who the nurses and people like that, the staff. And as a result, before I left dialysis, I bought lunch for all of them one time.
that's so nice, to be able to embrace your community and appreciate the staff in that way. So I'll ask the living donors, start with John. Is there anything that you think is a misconception about being a living kidney donor that you want to clear up for others who may be watching who are considering being a living donor for their loved ones?
Absolutely. The issue with age rubs me wrong. To automatically want to disqualify someone without any consideration just because of a number, I think is really wrong. And I didn't do this to try and be a hero or anything, but I did want to prove that the fact that I was 60 some years old when this process started, and 70 years old by the time I donated my kidney, that age didn't make a difference, that I was still able to walk the treadmill, go through all, I mean, Diane mentioned needles and blood donations and things, and I went through 7 months of needles and tests and this doctor to that doctor to check my kidney, to check my heart, check everything under the sun, which is good. I mean, obviously they've got to make sure that they're taking care of my well-being as well as looking out for Nicole. And it really was kind of at sometimes a bit of a tug and a war between our doctors and our teams, because Nicole had her team at the University of Illinois and I had my team. And my team is saying, we're looking out for John's benefits, not to be mean, but not looking out for Nicole. We've got to worry about John. And Nicole's team is looking out for Nicole and they can't get involved with John. So sometimes there was, to me, it seemed like there was some clash there, but can't say enough about the team there, because we had a coordinator that just was tremendous in keeping things together and keeping both sides together. And by the time it went before the board and the doctors were presented my case and all of my statistics on how everything was and how my kidney functioned and all, and I couldn't even begin to remember all the different tests and numbers that I had gone through at the time. But when they finally presented to the board and the board said that, okay, your goal age doesn't matter here. You're healthy, you can handle it, your kidney's healthy. The gentleman that got my kidney is gonna benefit from it for a number of years, and Nicole's gonna benefit, and everybody come out, and everybody ended up coming out well with the whole deal.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you pushed forward and didn't let them, disqualify you just based on a number, and you were able to give that gift. And now Nicole is able to be free of dialysis and live her life and make a difference. So that's awesome. So Diane, how about you? What would you want people to know that considering being a living donor?
I would say the main thing that I found out was to pay attention to the doctors, pay attention to what they tell you and what they say. I had never, ever in my life, here I was 50 years old donating a kidney. I had never been in the hospital, never, ever, never had surgery, anything. So this was, this was a new experience for me. I had participated, this was well before Facebook, but there were a number of different sites that were on the computer, very, well-known sites where you could interact with other people that had donated or were going through the process of donating. And it was interesting. You learned a lot of information. You got a lot of support from the people. But what I found was that there was a lot of people saying, oh, I recovered in 2 weeks. I went back to work. I ran a marathon. I was on the treadmill or whatever. And I had a desk job. I remember talking to the surgeon at one of the visits saying, well, do you think I could go back in 4 weeks? And I remember him looking at me and telling me, he said, we tell you 6 weeks. He said, because that's literally how long it takes your body to recover. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, whether you cooperate or not. And it was very true. It was 6 weeks. I was paying attention to other people that were probably half my age, or that were in a different physical condition than what I was. And it did take 6 weeks. It got better each day that time went on, but he was right. It literally took 6 weeks. So I learned a very, very valuable lesson that to pay attention to what they're telling you, pay attention to what they're saying, how you should recover, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, because they know, they've been there.
Thank you. That's great information. And I just want to highlight something that John said. And he talked about there was a team that was taking care of him as the donor and a team that was taking care of Nikki. And that's really important for people to know, because donors' health is taken with the utmost of care and concern, and they would never put one person at risk to save another. So anyone who was to come forth to try to be a living donor for someone could feel safe to know that everything is going to be done to make sure that they are safe to donate. So thank you for highlighting that, John. So I happen to know Quin personally and know a lot about what she does. So I'm going to start with her with this question, and then go to others. But how do you use your kidney diagnosis to advocate and educate those around others, going along the way?
My passion and purpose in life is helping others. When I finished school, I actually got my degree in psychology, and I was working on my degree in professional clinical psychology, and I was working as a social worker. So getting my feet out on the pavement for others has always been just kind of in my DNA. So when this came about, well, I don't want to say this came about, but when I was diagnosed with kidney failure, I said, how can I use this journey to help other people? And so I decided to become an advocate, and to talk to other patients, because when you get diagnosed with kidney failure, whether it's something like FSGS where you kind of know it might be coming, or if it's just immediate, you're in the hospital and you have to start right then and there, it turns your life upside down. It doesn't come with a handbook. It doesn't come with a manual to tell you how to deal with it, how to process feelings, how to grieve the life that you once lived and understood and knew. So I wanted to be that person to help people to understand you can do it. It's like I lived with someone who was on dialysis for 35 years. I'm doing it. You can do it too. It's not a death sentence. I always tell people dialysis is not a death sentence. You can live your life and be on dialysis. You have to make adjustments, and it's not always easy, but it's possible. So me, everyone knows I'm a very grateful person. I live in gratitude. And so I like to try to spread that with others. Just saying, this isn't the life we would have chosen for ourselves, but it happened. So let's try to find a way to help others develop a good relationship with their disease so that it's not their foe, and that they're able to coexist with it in a healthy way, and just just not to let dialysis have you, but you have dialysis, and you can write your narrative about how the life that you want to live, not the life that people tell you or you think you're supposed to live. So I just wanted to get out there and really help people. And I knew that this was a vehicle to help so many people who just don't have a lot of information about dialysis that I was privy to, because like I said, I grew up with it.
Awesome. That's great. And so you really didn't, I mean, it seems like your family had lots of experience with it, but others, this may have been totally new to your family. And so I don't know, we'll start with Gregg. And have you used this as a vehicle to educate others in general, or either just others in your family or friends?
Actually, there was a lady that I used to do dialysis with that had been there for 12 years. And I tried to encourage her to be as, what would you say?
You encouraged her to.
Well, I encouraged her, yes, not to give up and to do what the doctors told her to do. Obviously, yeah, and to go ahead and explore a transplant plant. And actually, after I left and got a kidney, she got a kidney.
She had thought she would not be eligible for a kidney and had never gone through the process to see if she would be able to get a transplant. But he had encouraged her that she should go and that she should go through the process. And she did end up getting a kidney.
That's wonderful.
And this lady was in her 60s or 70s at this time. So, I told Barnes too, that if they needed somebody to talk to people, that I would be more than happy to do so. We also helped start a transplant support group here in Springfield. Now, I don't know why. I guess due to lack of interest, it's kind of gone by the wayside, but it's something that I really believe in.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Nikki, how about you? Have you used your journey to help others have a better understanding of kidney disease and transplantation?
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think that it can't hear me? Okay. To be perfectly honest, I don't think that it was until recently that I was finally in a place where I felt like I could share my story. it took a long time. And I spent a lot of my teenage years and younger adult years afraid to talk about it and uncomfortable with people knowing. I was afraid of, I didn't want a sympathy reaction from people. I didn't want people to treat me differently because they knew I was dealing with chronic kidney disease. I didn't want people to look at me differently and what I was able to do because I went to dialysis 3 nights a week. So I feel like it's not until recently that I have actually been able to talk about my story. And to be quite honest, this is the first time we've said these things out loud to anybody else up, outside of our family. And so it was so new, and kidney disease is not in my family. I had no experience with it. To this day, doctors aren't able to tell me what caused my kidney disease. So there are so many unknown answers that I'm sure other people are facing too. And so recently, we've gotten involved with the Walk for Kidneys, and that was kind of our first step in raising awareness and trying to bring light to kidney disease and make people more aware that it's out there and how common it is. And so we've participated in the Walk for Kidneys for the past 2 years. And I think, from this point on, and I'm hoping that I can find more opportunities to help others. And it is important to me. I do want to, help others and advocate for making sure that people, get answers to the questions that they have. And so I hope that answers the question. It's new, but yes.
That absolutely answers the question. And I thank you so much for your transparency and your willingness to be here with us today, because this absolutely helps someone else. Sharing your story, and I know it's hard. And I can only imagine as a teenager how you must have felt and not wanting to share it. I understand that. Though I didn't deal with that firsthand. I remember being a teenager. It was a couple of years ago, but I do remember. I can imagine how I would have felt at that age, having to deal with what I dealt with at my age. So I commend you for just being strong enough to go through it and getting to this point and being willing to share with us is just amazing. And thank you so much for your willingness, for your transparency. It's just awesome, truly. So I want to ask the caregivers, the living donors, but you are also caregivers, support people within the family. How can others help support you and your loved one? This is for others too who are in the same position. So what would you say to people who are listening, who are wondering, how can I support my friend who gave a kidney to her husband and I know they're dealing with this? Because, it never really goes away. We're always dealing with kidney diseases, even as transplant recipients. So what would you say, Diane, to that?
Oh boy. I would tell you that from a support standpoint, that it was a joint effort between my husband and myself. And then, of course, family. Family was very helpful, very supportive, both not only from our brothers and sisters that we had, our direct family, but also we had aunts and uncles that were very supportive of us, helping us out as far as when we were both in the hospital and at home, of course, both recovering. They brought over meals, took out trash for us, got groceries for us, but just the moral and mental support, even just a phone call saying, how are you doing? Is everything going okay? Do you need anything from me? So I would say we had a wealth of both friends and family that were just providing that type of support for us.
Awesome. And how about you, Nikki and John? Or John, actually.
Oh, I don't know that I could pinpoint what could have been done to make it any more of a consideration for me. I mean, there was no question in my mind that this was going to happen. Support was there from the family, but it wasn't something that, and please don't take this the wrong way, I'm not a hero. It wasn't something that was looked for. I would say that if we can just educate everyone more about what it's all about, how it affects everybody in the family, and that educate people that you can, as a healthy human being, donate a kidney and still have a normal, active, everyday life. I mean, I woke up 3 hours after surgery and I was no different in my mind than beforehand. Maybe a lot of numbers changed that they told me about and things like that, but I was still the same guy, and I out of the hospital in 3 days and doing my thing. And I don't know that my recovery, how many weeks it was, or probably, I don't know that it was 6 weeks, but I was back to being a normal everyday guy in what I thought was a relatively short period of time. So if we can educate people that it's something that is not out of the norm, not really all that all consuming, so to say, and that you can do this and help somebody and still not have to worry about having an effect on yourself, that you've got a normal life ahead of you in doing so. And I think that that would help everybody, those that have gone through it, as well as those that are down the road that are going to need donations today, tomorrow, next week, and for years to come.
Yeah. Thank you both for that. And that's so important, because without living donors, we will never conquer the list of people that are waiting for kidneys. With deceased donation alone, I mean, Quin and I were both fortunate to receive deceased donor kidneys that are still working to keep us alive. But we will never conquer the whole list without living donors. So it is important for people to understand that it's definitely doable for healthy individuals to give a kidney, to save a life, and to go on and live a healthy life themselves. So thank you for sharing that.
And not only, if I may, not only just doable, but relatively speaking, in all honesty, pretty easily doable. I mean, I didn't miss too many steps, and I mean, outside of the fact that I've got a scar on the side of my body, you can never tell that I gave an organ up. I mean, I'm an everyday guy. I still do things that I did beforehand every day. And it wasn't a challenge. It really wasn't. And I just encourage anybody to look into it, find out for yourself how doable it is.
Yeah. And I just imagine the fact that you saved your daughter just made it that much easier.
Oh, you're going to make him cry.
Absolutely.
He's going to make me cry. We can just have a cry fest here because I'll cry in a minute. So then let's talk about going back to work. Nikki, you worked through dialysis and then you got your transplant. Talk to me about going back to work.
One of the things that I kept getting not yelled at, but the doctors kept reminding me that I couldn't force my body to recover faster than than it would let me, because recovery took a long time. And I was 30 when I got my transplant, and I felt like I should be able to go back to being 30. And that wasn't the case. It took a long time. From my surgery at the end of November, I was out of work until the beginning of March. So my recovery was long, and I had to be patient with myself. And, I had never been in the hospital. Like Diane shared, I had never been in the hospital before. I had never broken a bone. I had never had surgery before my kidney transplant. So there were so many new things to me, and I didn't know what to expect. And so I was surprised at how long it took my body to recover. I was surprised. It was hard for me to admit to the things I wasn't able to do for myself during recovery, like brushing my hair and things that you just take for granted. But going back to work, I really did let myself recover before I went back. And so by the time I was back to work, it was kind of like a new life. I joked all the time that I could now stay at work longer because I didn't have to leave for dialysis. And probably that wasn't, I should not have stayed at work longer. But, my life was totally different in a matter of 3 months. And going back to work was a smooth transition for me because I really did feel like I was healthy enough to be there, but it took time.
Great, thank you for
You know,
sharing.
Monica, what kind of made a lot of this easy, Nicole talks about her recovery. Now you think about this, Nicole being a single adult and having her own world, her own home, and myself and my wife, our son wasn't at home as well. He's out on his own. So my wife and I are at home, and you put my wife perspective, the position. I come home from the hospital 3 days after donation. Nicole comes home from the hospital 7, 8 days after. Obviously, being single and at home by herself, she can't go home and take care of herself. So moved back home with us and back into her old bedroom back with us. And now here you got my wife, her mother, obviously taking care of 2 babies all over again, going through. And, I like to consider myself to be a piece of cake and easy to get along with, but there were times I probably wanted to make her scream and kill me. And she'd have to go from one room to the other, from me to Nicole, from Nicole back to me. So although my recovery period I didn't think was too long, it was probably much too long in my wife's eyes, and in Nicole's even longer. But as a household, we made it through after several months. But you can't do it alone. You got to have support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can relate, Nicole, because I went back home to my parents' house post-transplant, and I was like, this is weird. I had to go home, and mom and dad took care of me and made sure I had meals and everything that I needed. And I'm like, I never dreamed at this age my parents would be taking care of me all over again. But it was a gift and a blessing that they were able to do it. Yeah. How about you, Quinn? How about your recovery post-transplant and when you got back to activity or back to work? How was that for you?
So post-transplant, like in the hospital, so I got to the ICU at midnight after surgery. That morning when I woke up, I was actually up and walking around, just because they were very adamant not to push yourself, but the sooner you can get up and start moving, the better it is for healing. So I went in that Thursday. I was discharged that Monday, and I came home. So after then, my journey got a little difficult because my dad went into the hospital. So it was a lot of trying to look. I had to do a lot of taking care of me just because there was so many things going on during that time. But I didn't, I had to go back into the hospital a couple times just because like I had fluid around my kidney and they had to go in and put a drain back in, little minor things like that. But for the most part, recovery was really easy. I always tell people I've had a few abdominal surgeries, and that was probably the least painful and easiest one that I've had. Going back to work, so that also was a little different than I imagined. I knew I was going back to work at post-transplant because I had already been given the job offer. However, I didn't anticipate my dad passing, but I ended up going back to work 2 weeks after he passed. It was the first day I was supposed to be home by myself, and I didn't. It's like, okay, how do you kind of sit with that? And I ended up getting a call, and they told me that I could start working that day. And the good thing about it was I was a remote employee. My job was in Indianapolis, and I live in Chicago. So I was able to work from bed. for the first few months. And that helped me to be able to recover, not having to do a lot of movement. I didn't have to travel or anything like that. If I ever told them, like, today I'm just not feeling that great, as I like to say, I was side affecting a lot, because those are some strong medicines your body is trying to adjust to. And in the first couple of months, your body is like, what did I ever do to you? It's going through some changes. And so if I ever had a day I was really side affecting, I could just tell them, look, I'm not feeling the greatest today. And they were totally, they worked with me. But it was a pretty smooth transition going back to work also. I went into a field that was dialysis related. So it was like going home. I went right back home. So, and it was therapeutic for me, to kind of give myself something to do. But the post-op process, I anticipated it being much harder than it was. It wasn't, it had its, barriers and obstacles, but it wasn't as bad as, I kind of imagined it in my mind. Or sometimes when you hear a bunch of different stories, you have to realize your healing process is going to be specific to you. So yeah, it wasn't horrible. It was worth it. I can tell you that it wasn't horrible. And going back to work was definitely a great process. And I was just so blessed to be able to do it remotely so that I could heal and work at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, Greg? How was your post-transplant?
Actually, I had retired by the time that I had my transplant. However, my job, once I got home and, I was ready to go back out again, my job was to get my butt in the gym to maintain, or try to improve on my condition. I mean, as far as weight and that kind of stuff, because before I ever started this whole process, in February of 2008, I weighed 228 pounds and I managed to lose all that weight. And the way that I did that was lifting weights. And I had 1 month where I rode a recumbent bike for 800 miles. I had several months where I got on the treadmill and I did over 200 miles on the treadmill, and I was working out 3 days a week. So basically I was doing, something 5 days a week at a minimum.
We are coming to the end of our time together, and I just want to thank you all for sharing your stories, for sharing this time, for being so inspirational. And I hope that we have helped others tonight by having this conversation. I think we could probably sit around and talk for hours. Just feels like hanging out with family. But we have designated an hour for this. So I just want to thank you all. And before we go, everybody just let me know real quickly how you celebrate your kidney anniversary. You have a cake? You have a party? Let's see, start with you, Greg.
Actually, we just have a nice dinner.
Nice. How about you, Nikki?
Amazing the things you can find on Amazon. I bought a cookie cutter, kidney cookie cutter, and made and decorated some kidney shaped sugar cookies, and just spend the time with my family. We have a nice dinner as well. This year it'll be a little different, but yes. I'm sure we'll still celebrate.
Yes. How about you, Quin?
So this was my 5-year. If you can see, I had my balloons.
Cute. I love it.
Yeah, so I just had some balloons, spent the time with my mom just because of the space we're in right now, and just celebrated the blessing.
All right. Well, mine usually falls around Thanksgiving. It's going to be a little before Thanksgiving, and I think it's going to be quiet, just time spent with my daughter, my sister, my parents, and probably have a nice meal as well. So it's been fun chatting with you all. So thank you so much, and have a good night.
Thank you, Monica. Very nice to meet you, Nikki and John and Quin.
Nice to meet you too.
All right.
Everybody stay safe.
All of you, please stay
too.
safe.
Yeah, definitely.